The Oort Perimeter, Chapter 12. A soft clicking and a thud echoed across the hull of the ship. Lars listened with interest and was intrigued by this. "Docking completed, sir," said the pilot. "Secure all stations and go to ready departure." "I want to be able to run on a moment's notice if something goes wrong," said Toby. "Aye, sir." Toby stood up and turned to Lars and Vlad. "All right, the show is yours, gentlemen. We'll be maintaining the illusion of the cargo ship while allowing you onto the station to begin your recon. From here on, though, we'll have to observe radio silence. So you'll need to do this exactly as I've told you." "Understood," said Lars. Toby and Vlad then walked back to one of the side exit doors and waited as the inner hull access hatch unlocked and slid to the side. To his surprise, he found his path blocked by a thick, black, charcoal-like wall. A moment later it liquefied and flowed to the side to reveal the holographic shell that was hiding the ship. That always amazes me when I see it. "Fluidic armor, right?" said Lars. "Aye. Every ship killer in the fleet is equipped with it. It's the best armor ever made. It can take a beating and then heal itself afterwards." "You can't beat that," replied Toby. "Well, at least until someone builds an anti-fluidic armor weapon. Then they'll just build a better armor. In the meantime, it does the job nicely." "I'm sure it does." Lars then motioned to Vlad to follow him. They then walked through the holographic outer shell of the ship until they reached a thick, double doors that hissed open to reveal a dingy, dirty hallway littered with garbage and broken old shipping crates of every shape and size. The two men immediately gagged as the odor of rancid alcohol, rotting food, unwashed bodies and other less savory odors assaulted their noses. Several aliens of various species lay slumped over in the hallway, either in a drunken stupor or unconscious for other reasons. Small alien rodents and insects of various kinds scurried across the walls and floor around them. It was so bad that calling it a cesspool would be a compliment. Ugh, the holographic simulation that Toby showed me didn't even begin to do justice to the level of filth in this place. It's worse than anything I've ever seen on Earth. "Even my gym bag isn't this bad," muttered Lars. "Well, you have to admit that his assessment of what we'd encounter was correct, if nothing else," said Vlad. Lars grunted, and then motioned for his partner to follow. They moved down the hallway as quickly as they could, carefully trying not to step on anyone, or in anything gross or unpleasant. They soon exited into a large promenade lined with broken-down storefronts and booths filled with various alien goods and merchandise. What appeared to be a slave auction was being held in a corner at the far end. "Where do you think we should go first?" asked Lars. "Isn't it standard procedure to go where the liquor flows?" asked Vlad. "On Earth maybe, but the same might not be true out here. Besides, we're dressed as fringe traders. We should probably wander around the shops and pretend we're looking for things to buy and sell. Hopefully we can stumble onto someone that might know something of use to us. Just try not to start any trouble." Vlad nodded and slipped away to begin searching. Lars, in turn, walked towards a nearby booth on the left side of the promenade when a short, pig-like alien stumbled in front of him. It then squealed with sickening glee. "You're a fringe trader, aren't you? Eh? What kind of cargo you got? I'm sure it's worth a lot. Eh? How about you be a smart man and give it to me," he said in a nervous, jittery tone. Lars glared at the pig man from under his hood and brushed him aside. "Go play somewhere else, boy," he said. He walked past the pig man and continued walking towards the booth. "Your cargo is worth more than your life, Fringer," shouted the pig man as he drew a knife and leapt at Lars. But to the pig man's complete surprise, Lars seemed to vanish in a flare of cape and dust as he sidestepped the flying alien attacker. The pig man sailed effortlessly past him, and then crashed to the floor with a thud. A moment later a sharp, piercing blow from a heavy metal boot hit him in the side, crushing one of his ribs. He then screamed as the kick lifted him off the floor and tossed him through the air. He crashed into a nearby pile of trash and lay still. Lars looked over at a large, burly, wolf-like Sevidith and nodded his thanks. The Sevidith grunted in return, and then walked away to deal with the pig man. Lars cocked an eyebrow in interest, but said nothing. "You all right?" came a voice in his ear. "Yeah, I'm fine. I think I just experienced an old fairy tale with a modern twist." "How so?" "Some weird pig-like guy attacked me thinking he could steal my cargo." "A pig?" asked Vlad. "Yeah, he tried to jump me, but I sidestepped his attack and dumped him on the floor. Then some weird wolf guy came in behind me and punted him like a pigskin. I think he was a Sevedith or something. Big, burly, wolf-like dude, and but ugly too." "Yeah, sounds like one. I was about to start inquiring at a local shop over here when I heard the commotion. I wasn't sure if you were hurt, so I thought I'd check." "Thanks. Keep looking and let me know if you spot anything interesting." "Roger that." Lars then scanned the area around him briefly, before coming to a stop in front of the nearest booth. Seeing nothing of interest, he moved on, eventually stopping at another shop where he was greeted by the store owner. "Ah, you're a fringe trader. It's unusual to see ones like yourself here. What brings you to our dirty little corner of the galaxy?" said the store owner in a voice more chipper than it should have been. Lars studied the dog-like shopkeeper with curiosity, but said nothing. He watched as the shopkeeper's flat red tongue dropped out of his mouth as he panted excitedly, his tail waving frantically like a flag in a hurricane. "I'm certain you have a cargo that's very interesting and highly valuable." "Types like you always do," continued the shopkeeper. "I'm here looking for information," said Lars. "Ah, an intellectual cargo. How quaint. I suspect that your buyer is rich." Lars studied the shopkeeper suspiciously. "You could say that," he said. "Ah, then what kind of information are you looking for?" "I hear lots of good, juicy gossip around here every day. I'm sure something might interest you. I'm curious about the Jinn. The galaxy seems to have become upset about them recently for some reason. My buyer is interested in finding out why that is, and about what." The shopkeeper's expression changed from one of happy consumerism to a bile-laden disgust. He flipped his paws at Lars in a symbol of disgust. "Oh, is that all?" he said with a hint of disappointment. "Then you know why everyone is angry with them?" "I do. Those Chapaji are threatening the very peace we've struggled so hard to achieve. I hope those good-for-nothing Gaekvan just step aside and let us wipe those paw nippers from existence once and for all. The galaxy will be better off without them." Lars squinted slightly. He didn't like the attitude of the shopkeeper. But, at the same time, he wasn't certain he wanted to find out what a Chapaji was either. He had his suspicions that it was a reference to Earth, but he wasn't sure. After a moment he decided that it was best not to continue the conversation. He gestured politely to the shopkeeper, and then continued on his way down the promenade. As he walked, he hoped that Vlad was doing better than he was. But he wasn't. At least not initially. Several times he was attacked by random thieves and sex merchants, and at one point was nearly drawn into a large bar fight that had spilled out into the promenade. Given the troubles he was encountering, he wondered if Lars was all right. Despite all they'd been through on Earth, those experiences paled in comparison to what they were encountering now. He was now starting to understand all the things Toby had warned them about in his mission briefing. He also was beginning to understand why the director hadn't warned them about this. If he had, they might not have wanted to go. As he walked along the promenade, looking for any possible answers to the long list of questions they had, he noticed two tall, burly men in black capes standing in a nearby doorway. As soon as they realized he'd seen them, they immediately vanished into the shadows. This caught his interest. Not because of what they'd done, but because of the brief, fleeting glance he had of their faces. They appeared to be human. He wondered if that was just a figment of his imagination. If they truly were human, why were they here, and where did they come from? He contemplated going after them, but thought better of it, being that he was all alone. He'd instead continue with his research, and then meet up with Lars again at the far end just as they'd planned. If the mysterious men were still around at that point, they might consider following them. Phylan strolled down the long, winding hallways of the humanoid quarter and soon reached the offices of the Gaekvan mission. He then entered and strode up to the receptionist with a smile. "I'm Phyland of Earth. I'm here to meet with the ambassador," he said. The receptionist gurgled gently as she motioned for him to enter. He bowed slightly and then walked over to the door of the ambassador's office. As soon as he entered, he stopped cold in his tracks as a familiar, dark green face greeted him with a smile. "Adjutant President Sin," he said in surprise. The man laughed and stood up. "Greetings, my friend." "How are you?" he replied. Phyland furrowed his brow in interest. "I'm fine. But I wasn't expecting you here today." Sin walked around the end of the large, ornate, white marble desk, and said, "The president sent me here on special business." "But why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "I wanted it to be a surprise." "And I see I've succeeded." "Yes, you have. So what's this special business?" Sin opened his mouth to speak, but paused as the door to his office opened again. A moment later Finch strolled in, his ornately decorated cloak sparkling in the soft light of the room. He stopped and cocked his head in curiosity at seeing both Phyland and Sin in the same room. "Finch, what are you doing here?" asked Phyland in amazement. "I was requested to gala with the ambassador. But I did not expect to find such strange feathers among the nest," he chittered. Sin motioned to Finch and said, "I've invited both of you here for a special meeting. It involves Earth and its home system of Sol. While those are obviously not the common names for them, I will use your names, Ambassador Phyland, out of polite respect to you and your people." "Thank you. It's much appreciated, but not necessary. I've gotten used to being called anything from a Chapaji to a Nordmer." Sin frowned. "Neither of those are polite names for your species. I would like to avoid seeing those used, or for that matter, your common name of Jin if possible. It's always most polite to use the self-identified name of a species whenever possible." He then looked at Finch and said, "With certain exceptions, of course, for difficulties stemming from language issues." Finch flared his wings and curtsied slightly. "My feathers were not soiled," he replied. Sin smiled at the Fondo ambassador's graciousness. "I thank you for your kindness," he said. He then glanced at Phyland as he shrugged, and shook his head. "Well, proper names or no, right now, humans and Earth aren't exactly favorites in the galaxy. Other than your people, 4 of the other ancient races, and a collection of other smaller republics, we're pretty much persona non grata with the rest of the galaxy, and we still don't know why," said Phyland. Sin pursed his lips and thought. "That's one of the reasons I'm here. It's my job to discover who this force is who wishes to do your people such an indescribable harm. It's my belief that the fear, which they have created against you, is not their chief goal, but rather merely ploy that is being used to achieve a much greater, and more sinister purpose." Phyland looked at Sin curiously. "What kind of purpose? You make it sound like we're a pawn in some galactic chess game or something." "You are. Even though your race is of inconsequential size, occupying a single planet within a single system deep within our Republic space, you're somehow seen as a threat to the galaxy by many around us. Yet you're neither a threat, nor a concern to anyone, either in whole or in part. The only ones who should have any concern for their future are my people. Since you're deep within our space, we'd be the first to lose territory to you if you were to become greedy and expansionist." Phyland blinked. "Expansionist? We're lucky enough to keep things under control at home as it is. The last thing we're worried about right now is spreading out across the galaxy. We still need to get our own house in order before we bother expanding into anyone else's." "I understand that. But there's also the fact that your race has managed to catch up to, and even surpass, the technology of most races within the galaxy in less than 2 of your centuries. It does not take much for one to realize that, with a technological growth rate that explosive, it would only be a matter of time before you could sweep aside all opposition in the galaxy with little effort, should you wish to." Phyland snickered. "Surpassed most within the galaxy? Not likely. Sure, we're highly advanced. But, as we say on Earth, there's always someone better out there. I admit we've advanced quite a bit over the past couple centuries or so, but most of that was in response to the many threats made against Earth, and the human race, from across the galaxy, be they real or simply perceived. It's like the sword of Damocles. With that threat hanging over our heads, you can't blame us for what we did. No, I can't, and neither can my people. They're wise enough to see that your actions have been reactive rather than proactive. But not all species are able to see something as obvious as that. Hence why fear reigns so strongly among the 4 ancient races who've turned against you. However, I still do not feel that it is your technological prowess that they fear most. Such advancement, under normal circumstances, would be more likely to draw curiosity than hatred. Therefore the reasons must involve other motives. Phylan furrowed his brow slightly. Such as? Sin sighed. There have been many rumors of late that speak of an unknown force among the races that seeks to destroy our long-standing peace in order to gain power. I wish to find out who it is and stop them. As do I, said Phylan. Sin smiled, and then looked over at Finch, who was quietly taking in the entire conversation without saying a word. Sin chuckled. Forgive me, my friend. I did not mean to leave you out of our discussion. Finch shook his head. Sometimes it is best that one listen first, and then only speak if he has something beneficial to contribute. Unfortunately, I do not. Therefore, I simply listen in order to gain a greater understanding of the circumstances. Is there anything you'd like to ask? Finch shook his head. I have nothing at this time. However, I am most concerned about this growing menace who threatens both my Wingsanga and his flock, as well as my own wingmates. Therefore, it is necessary that we solve this mystery before it harms us all. Sin pursed his lips thoughtfully. Agreed. But we will have to begin slowly. And, to do that properly, we must first find the direction in which we will find our best and most productive answers. Perhaps, if we should find that proper path, we may as yet save the day. Finch nodded and bowed slightly. My wings, and my wits, are at your disposal. Sin grinned. I would hope for your eyes and ears as well. Finch cooed slightly. You shall have them as well.